Ancient, of or relating to the historical period beginning with the earliest known civilizations, having had an existence of many years, existing or occurring in times long past, specifically in history.
Firstborn among continents, says Agassiz, America has been falsely denominated the New World. Hers was the first dry land lifted out of the waters. Hers the first shore washed by the ocean that enveloped all the earth beside. And while Europe was represented only by islands rising here and there above the sea, America already stretched in an unbroken line of land from Nova Scotia to the far west. That ancient America, as we shall see, was inhabited by the grand race of men whose deathless traces have been left upon the surface of the globe and among the stars of the sky. When in the course of the following pages, the key of the Great Pyramid, which forms the reverse of the Great Seal of the Secretary of State of the United States, is applied to unlock the mystery of long submerged islands and long depopulated lands, and cause them to lift up their voices to tell of the feet that once moved in choral dances upon their level floors, it will appear that the science of that ancient time was as the flight of the eagle, while that of our present civilization is but as the borrowing of the mole. All the heraldry of the nations, it will be shown. And all the emblems, ceremonies, and figures of speech, of religion, and of epic poetry are derived from the art and the science, the triumph and the destruction of the ancient Americans. America, known to the mystics as Atlantis, when this ruin befell, was the seat of the greatest empire that has ever existed, and its irresistible armies were terrorizing all Europe and Asia. In America, rediscovered in the 15th century and repopulated in the 17th, was recovered Egypt and the Promised Land, or the land of the constellation of the eagle, Aquila, Egyptus, and the swan, Cygnus, Canaan, Canada. Excerpts from the book New Light from the Great Pyramid, written by Albert Ross Parsons in 1893. This information is republished and cited by Dr. R. Swinburne Clymer in his book Ancient Mystic Oriental Masonry in 1907. Dr. Swinburne Clymer also wrote in his book, "We are not indebted to either ancient Egypt for either religion or masonry, but to America. It is a fact that at Memphis, Egypt, in the pyramids, under the guidance of the kings, the mystic rites of masonry were worked many thousand years ago, but at that time Egypt and the continent of America were one and the same." Dr. Swinburne Clymer continues, "Some say that America was peopled by the Carthaginians who possessed the Cape Verde Islands, which are only 3 weeks' sail from that continent. Their ships having women and children on board might miss the intended islands before the invention of the compass, and if so, they would inevitably be driven by the trade winds to the coast of America." Others, judging from the similarity of some religious rites, have conjectured that it was peopled by the 10 tribes at the dispersion of Israel. Some think it received its population from China or Japan. Others that it was colonized by some wandering tribes of Japheth, who penetrated into the trackless regions of North America by the Straits of Asia. Some have been bold enough to assert that America was not inundated at the deluge, and that, consequently, the Aborigines were antediluvians and the most ancient people on Earth, which last assertion is correct.
Modern, to be of, or relating to recent times or the present. Modern history, relating to the present or recent times as opposed to the remote past. Characteristic or expressive of recent times or the present. Contemporary. The SLC24A5 gene has been shown to be a major factor in the light skin tone of Europeans. The SLC24A5 gene mutation has been the subject of selection in the ancestors of Europeans as recently as within the last 5,000 years, and is fixed in modern European populations. According to geneticist, professor and medical doctor Keith Cheng, white people and Asians like himself are mutants of dark-skinned people.
As we began to dig deeper into the antiquities of the Americas, it will become more apparent that what is considered the New World to a few is indeed the Old World to many. With ancient histories that supersedes the recent revisionary fairy tales full of propagated follies and their indoctrinated narrative. As I often say, the truth knows no lie, and it speaks for itself. That being said, before we go further, I want to address the lie that has many of us looking across the pond for answers. When the answers that many seek are right under your feet. But to hide this truth, They will lead us to believe that all humanity evolved from primates. And this facetious assertion supposedly occurred in only one location on the earth, which is asinine to say the least and buffoonery at its finest. Are the trees, flowers, grass, fish, birds, and animals from the same location on the earth? Or are the trees, flowers, grass, fish, birds, and animals indigenous and native to different parts of the earth? So why would we be any different? The truth is, man did not evolve from primates. According to Darwinists, mankind did. Furthermore, if all of humanity is to give acknowledgement and reverence to this subjective conjecture and hypothesized theory, why then are there no classifications for the African Europeans or African English, African British, African French, African Italians, African Australians, African Russians, African Asians? Why is there only one group of people on the entire earth misnomered as African Americans if all of humanity supposedly comes from Africa? Riddle me that. The scientists, the oldest human fossil remains everywhere, and the artifacts around the world all confirm who the oldest group of people are on the face of the earth. Dark-skinned or richly melanated people, or the melanations, are indigenous to the earth, descending from the most ancient of ancestors who were anywhere and everywhere inhabitable on the earth, on every continent, landmass, island, and peninsula. This fact is still preserved today in the ancient artifacts, the statues, sculptures, carvings, engravings, and images of the dark-skinned and richly melanated people in places like Indonesia, Southeast Asia, Angkor Wat in Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, China, and Hindustan, now known as India, just to name a few. The infamous lie that all dark-skinned people are from Africa is total BS, and this dismissive narrative has agenda written all over it. To attempt or to try placing the origins of all dark-skinned or richly melanated people in a box designated to only one out of the 7 known continents is a suppressive protocol to totally disregard the truth, commonly done by those whose ancestors were yet to exist to witness it. Isn't it ironic how the debunked hypothesis known as the out of Africa theory includes each and every racial group, skin color, and ethnicity throughout the earth as originating in Africa, but only one group of people, no matter where they are on the earth, are considered to be Africans? Think about that. Everybody is supposed to be originally from Africa, but only one group of people across the earth, who happens to be descended from the oldest and most ancient people on the earth, are exclusively classified as Africans. It doesn't take much to see the agenda, and it's all by design to mentally, spiritually, and to eventually physically displace the dark-skinned, richly melanated people indigenous to the earth off of your land and birthright as foreigners write themselves into the histories of many locations at our expense by solely designating our origins to only one location on the earth, while they claim everywhere. To put the ideology of the Out of Africa theory into perspective, I want to share a clip from my video, Claim of Thrones Part 3, and you be the judge. In this next segment, I want to go over Darwinism and the theory of evolution and who this actually applies to and what the Out of Africa theory is really all about. Darwinism is a theory of biological evolution developed by the English naturalist Charles Darwin and others. Darwinism is a belief that all species of organisms arise and develop through the natural selection of small, inherited variations that increase the individual's ability to compete, survive, and reproduce, or survival of the fittest. The theory of evolution by natural selection was first formulated in Charles Darwin's book titled On the Origins of Species in 1859. This published proposed thought gave birth to what we know as the theory of evolution today, which is a shortened form of the original term, the theory of evolution by natural selection, proposed by Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace in the 19th century. According to Darwin, man evolved from the apes of Africa. In his book, The Descent of Man, Volume 1, published in 1871, Darwin presented the idea that human beings evolved from apes. Darwin wrote, "It is therefore probable that Africa was formerly inhabited by extinct apes closely allied to the gorilla and chimpanzee. And as these two species are now man's nearest allies, it is somewhat more probable that our early progenitors lived on the African continent than elsewhere." Darwin also suggested that man is descended from a hairy quadruped, furnished with a tail and pointed ears in Volume 2, page 389. So who was Darwin addressing, and who was he talking to when he wrote, "It is somewhat more probable that our early progenitors lived on the African continent than elsewhere"? It's important to know that Darwin distinguished between the various human races or species of men, and he believed that some were superior to others. For example, Darwin wrote that more civilized races like Caucasians would one day exterminate the more savage races like the Negro and Australians, which he considered subspecies. Darwin also wrote, "Animals whom we made our slaves, we do not like or consider our equal." So, when Darwin wrote, it is somewhat more probable that our early progenitors lived on the African continent than elsewhere, he was not addressing, talking to, or referring to any of the melanations or people of color anywhere on the earth. Or any so-called black or brown or high yellow American Negro European or African Moor or tribesman, no Asiatic Negreto or sunburned Pacific Islander or Australian Aborigine. Or anyone that is called any other term that has been applied to people of color throughout the earth. Darwin was addressing and referring to those who he called the civilized races, his Indo-European colleagues. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, the idea that humans evolved in Africa can be traced to Charles Darwin in 1871. And today we have a lot of people actually believing that the first man originated in Africa because of this theory and hypothesis that Darwin introduced almost 150 years ago. So, why would any person of color believe in and subscribe to this Indo-European theory? Why would you accept being tricked to believe that some mismatched monkey bone fragments that Darwinists conjured up to support their out-of-Africa theory are the oldest remains of a human ancestor? Let's examine the facts. Lucy is a partial fossil skeleton about the size of a chimpanzee, supposedly female, discovered by a paleontologist named Donald Johanson on November 30th, 1974, in Hadar, Ethiopia. The age is estimated to be 3.2 million years old. The find includes a V-shaped jaw, part of a hip and large bones, and other assorted bones with very little skull fragments. According to Dr. Johansen, the hominid walked upright. Her brain size is still small, ape-like in proportion, and most of the other features are predominantly ape-like. Some say that anatomically the specimen is not different than a modern chimpanzee. The jaw has a particular and distinct V shape, which is totally different than human jaws. On November 20th, 1986, Dr. Johansen gave a lecture at the University of Missouri in Kansas City on Lucy and why he thinks the specimen is the human ancestor. During the Q&A after Johansen's lecture, he was asked some serious questions and a lot of facts and information about this Lucy discovery was revealed. Some information that many of us know nothing about and some facts that will definitely change your perspective. Did you know? When Johansen was asked how far away from Lucy did he find the knees, The knee bones were actually discovered about a year earlier than the rest of Lucy. A year before the discovery of Lucy. A year before the discovery of the Lucy specimen. And Johansen reluctantly answered that the knees were discovered about 200 feet lower than the site where Lucy was found and about 1.5 miles away, a year before the discovery of Lucy's specimen. Please process these facts. A year before Lucy was found, or before the Lucy specimen was found, the knees were discovered. "200 feet deeper in the ground is like digging the length of 2 official NBA basketball courts deep. And 1.5 miles away is like the distance of 30 city blocks. Why were we never taught these facts? Because the supposed 3.2 million year old claim and the entire ideology would have been ridiculed, and this manufactured construct could not have been used to convince the unknowing. That's like coming out of your house and finding a penny on the ground, and then getting in your car and busted about 30 city blocks until you come across a construction site where they are digging 200 feet deep in the ground to build the foundation for a building and an underground parking lot. And you find another penny at the bottom of this dig, and then you say, whoever lost that penny that I found when I was coming out of the house must have lost this penny deep down in this construction site too. These pennies have to come from the same pocket. See how that sounds? As we can see from the information presented in the video clip, the supposed discovery and the finding of the Lucy specimen in Ethiopia is a staged and manufactured event. The bogus dating of 3.2 million years for the scattered monkey bone fragments that aren't even from the same monkey is used to support the Outer Africa theory.
Francis Galton, Charles Darwin, Paul Broca, and Thomas Huxley. These 4 Europeans are the first Pan-Africanists, the first Afrocentrics. They're responsible for creating the out of Africa and hominid theories, which were based on eugenics. Eugenics is one group of people controlling the evolutionary destiny of another group of people, or one group being made the least fit to survive by another group controlling all of the educational institutions of the world, which has that group controlling every land. Eugenics is how a global people became continental, also known as African descent.
And this ideology and school of thought is all rooted in eugenics, which still exists today in the forms of birth control, abortion clinics, discrimination, stereotypes, and racism. The concept of race was popularized by anthropologist Johann Blumenbach in the late 1770s. Blumenbach identified the varieties of mankind as Caucasians, Mongolians, Malayans, Ethiopians, and Americans, and he first coined the term Caucasian to describe the variety of people inhabiting Europe, West Asia, and northern India. This term reflected Blumenbach's claim that the Caucasian was the superior beauty and originated in the Caucasus Mountains. Before the first centuries of this common era, The continents, lands, islands, and peninsulas around the earth were inhabited by their very own indigenous, dark-skinned, and richly melanated people for eons prior to any foreign invasions or conquest by Caucasian people.
Anthropology, the science of human beings, especially the study of human beings and their ancestors through time and space and in relation to physical character, environment and social relations, and culture.
With the introduction of anthropology in the late 1800s, confirmations from various excavation sites in different continents showed that the skulls or crania from the oldest skeletal remains excavated at these locations were Negroid. Which also proves that dark-skinned people were anywhere and everywhere inhabitable on the earth. I hope that you have been informed by the material and the information, and that you've enjoyed the content and production. Please support the channel. Your support is appreciated in the production of the video presentations.